If we went fishing and caught 50 crappie or catfish, we came home, my grandmother would gut and clean the fish. My grandfather would take those fish. 25 of them went to neighbors. 25 went in our deep freezer. My grandfather said, you don't wait on the government to feed you when you can feed yourself. And he had had a dire life. He was from Edenton, Georgia, and his father abandoned him at 9 years old. He had to work in a sawmill to support his mother and his sisters. So he sacrificed literacy. So he placed a supreme amount of focus and will to want his grandchildren to be educated. My grandmother grew up literate simply because they went to a church that offered schooling for children of sharecroppers. And her mother told the people that are on the farm they worked on, if your children don't work during picking season, my children would not either. They have to go be educated. The people that they worked for, the man was brutal and mean. He called the little girls little boys. He called them nigger. I've never heard of the N-word. He treated them harshly. And I found a letter years later from the woman who had been his wife. And in that letter, she apologized. And she said, my children don't come see me now that they've escaped the South. I rarely hear from them and I don't see them. So Betty, I'd like to appreciate you coming to see me. I'd like to appreciate you sending food to sustain me. I'd like to appreciate you and your sisters for taking care. And I remember being so angry. And I asked her why. Why would you help that woman when you told me how brutally mean her husband could be? And she looked at me and she said, they were miseducated. They didn't know no better. The undermining of education is not just to undermine Black people. It's to undermine the poor and the white. And as you can see in this current presidency, it is still working as effectively as it has ever worked. You got people working against their own best interests because they don't want to be associated with niggas. But you're being treated like one. You're being robbed of job and opportunities. This is what I learned in the Collier Heights. I learned empathy and compassion from a woman who had worked in a field as a child. I learned from my grandfather dignity and literacy from a man who was functionally illiterate and had been raised in the most undignified conditions that one can imagine. Outside of my home, we would walk a mile past a graveyard, Lincoln Cemetery. Me and my autistic uncle, so those are some exciting walks and talks. And we would go to Bell and Wilder's barbershop. And Mr. Bell and Mr. Wilder, in that community, that only a mile away from the house I grew up in, was poor. It was more distraught. It was more bleak. There was less hope there. In that community, that barbershop represented hope. It represented encouragement. It represented fatherhood for boys who did not have fathers. It represented, in a lot of ways, Jesus in the streets, because I didn't read much about Jesus being in a church when he was in the Bible. They were deacons and they brought the gospel right there in your chair as you got your hair cut. If it had not been for Mr. Bell and Wilder, I would not have understood that the grace and dignity I was being raised with was in other people's homes too. If it had not been for Miss Ophelia, who would stop me as I was walking. Hey, boy, my name's Michael. Boy, where you going, Michael? I'm going to the candy lady. Hold on, let me call your grandmother. But I just told you where I was going. I want to make sure you ain't lying, Michael. I wouldn't have understood the social responsibility for other people's children had it not been for Miss Ophelia. If I didn't live in the neighborhood that my principal lived in, thank you, sister, I wouldn't have understood that our teachers are better when they live in the communities they teach in. And I wouldn't have developed the political philosophy that if you're going to be a teacher, a policeman, or a fireman in the community, you should be a product of that community or a community like that. It's imperative that you are individually, I'm talking to the young people, it is imperative that you are individually successful. And a lot of times we talk in coalitions and collaborations, and that's fine, but we're only as strong as our weakest link. We're only as strong as the weakest link. So I need you to be as strong as you can possibly be, not compared to others, but to who you are yesterday. I need the better version of you tomorrow, because if we all do our little bit, no one has to do a lot. If we all do our little bit, none of us has to do a lot. Each student who built the brick did a little bit. And before you know it, if you look around, they had built a lot. Each student at this university did a little bit, and they have educated a lot. They have inspired the world. I want us to embrace the individualism that lends itself to the collective. It does not hide in the collective and simply complain about things that is going on. But it says individually, if I can make myself stronger, I can lend myself to create a better Atlanta. And that better Atlanta brings about a better wherever I am. If I'm in Richmond, Virginia, if I'm in Birmingham or Montgomery, Alabama, if I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, if I'm in Hilton Head, South Carolina, wherever I am becomes better, because individually, I understand the importance of creating the best possible Michael I can be in conjunction with the best possible whoever my cohorts are, and collectively, we become stronger. We become something unbreakable. We become something unbeatable, undefeatable. That is the only way it will work. I chose music as my pathway. At 9 years old, I told my mommy, not my grandmother, my mommy, who was only 16 years old when she had me, I'm gonna be a MC. She was smoking a joint. She said, F it, that's what you're gonna be. She never took me to a studio, she never mommied me. But that simple belief in me caused me to have a belief in myself that grew like a virus of confidence. It grew something in me that was unshakable. And along the way, I was challenged at every step. Like Miss Ely said, you're too smart to be a rapper, son. You should be an airplane pilot. 15 years old, white man comes up to me. I finally started seeing white folks by 15. Jim Berto comes up to me in Benjamin E. Mays High School and says, hey, I've been looking at your transcripts. You're a smart kid. How'd you like to learn how to fly planes? And I was like, cool. I get points and paid for it? Absolutely. Mr. Jim Berto taught a room full of black kids, including Slim from 112, aviation mechanics and aviation. We learned how to fly planes. Didn't get the license, but learned how to fly. Went back to Miss Ely, my fourth grade teacher, and told Miss Ely, you were right. I'm smart enough to be a pilot, but I still want to be a rapper. Just going to fly first class. Took a lot of years, but I'm a first class pass Negro now. Had I not accepted the challenge of Miss Ely, young people, if your professors do not challenging you, then they are doing a disservice to you. If you don't have a disbeliever, it will not make you a stronger believer. If you don't have someone that says, well, I doubt you can do that, you will never have the substance in yourself to say, yes, I can, I must, I will, and I will show you. All challenges do is provide you with the opportunity to become the best version of you you can possibly be. So accept challenges, accept doubt, accept other people's fear, but do not become fearful. Just tell them, I'll lead the way and show you how to be brave. That's what growing up on the west side of Atlanta taught me. Years later, The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, who I managed to build a civil relationship with, said, hey, I want you to come to this thing. It's the leader of all businesses in Georgia. Not the little businesses, too, the big ones, the Boeings, the Chick-fil-A's, the Home Depots. And I'm telling that same story about that man, Mr. Jim Berto, that white guy who I didn't know, but I gave my trust that day, who taught and encouraged me. And there's a man in the room who knows him. And he's texting him and saying, one of your former students is in a room full of the most powerful people in Georgia, giving testimony about what your chance meeting meant to him and how it has transformed him. Now, as I look around, there ain't another rapper in the room. Not one. Not Tip, not Jeezy, not Outkast, not anybody on the list they put above me that shouldn't be. And that's when I realized the governor respects my mind. He don't care about the Grammys. He respects my influence in my community. He don't care about the BET Awards. He knows that I have influence with his constituency in this city in a way that other rappers do not. And that didn't come from singing and dancing. That came from accepting challenges. That came from coming from a community that expects nothing but excellence from you. That came from the African-American experience that my grandmother had in Tuskegee that she brought as an import into Atlanta, Georgia, that put Andy Young in office, that put Maynard Jackson in office, that put Shirley Franklin, Bill Campbell, Kasim Reed, Keisha Lance Bottoms, Andre Dickens in office. That came from something bigger than my simple little dream. And I get to live my dream every day. But when God gives you your dream, it's going to come with some accountability and responsibility. Mr. Berto texted me the next day and said, I want to appreciate you for validating my 30, 40 years of teaching. I want to appreciate you for letting me know it was all worth it. I want to appreciate you. And I didn't think much of it, but man, young people, what an appreciation it is to simply be the best you can be, to validate the work of the deans, the counselors, the fellow students, the janitors at Tuskegee that believe in you. Because as I walked down the hallways of Frederick Douglass High School, I didn't just get encouraged by Dr. Samuel Hill, our principal, I got encouraged by the janitors, because every day we would walk in and have to read this phrase, without struggle, there's no progress. And the janitors believed that. So if I was skipping class, hey, man, you need to get to class, man. The janitors, the people who clean your cafeterias, who clean your dorms, deserve to have you be the best you can be, so we can be the best collective we can be. That is the purpose of your success. When I wrote Michael, it was simply an autobiography of a 9-year-old boy who grew up in an all-black world on the west side of Atlanta, who's the product of people from the deep south. But I didn't understand how much it would resonate until I did my first show about it, and a black man stood in front of a crowd of nearly all white folks in the deep south. And afterwards, a white man comes up to me. He said, I grew up in the Appalachian. I grew up poor. We didn't have much. And it took education to get me out of the grips of that. But I want to let you know, your album perfectly describes my life. What Booker T. Washington understood is that the working class, regardless of your color, have a unique opportunity to labor in education to transform this republic into what it should be. To transform each individual life to have a greater collective. So no success have I gained that is not attributable to Atlanta, that is not attributable to the Collier Heights, and that does not trace back to Tuskegee, Alabama. Warrior. I was telling the story of the South. They don't think much of us. They think we dumb. They think we slow. They don't understand we just think a little longer because they talking too fast. I was telling the story of a community, not just an individual child. I was telling the story of Raheem Biyah, who grew up 2 doors from me, who went on to become the chief dean of technology at Georgia Tech. I was telling the story of Chief Judge Asha Jackson, who was homeless her last 2 years of high school, but still found time to help a dyslexic Michael perfect his research paper so that I could graduate high school and is now a chief judge in DeKalb County. and has the Pinnacle program that gives first-time offenders the opportunity within a year to work themselves off a felons list and onto just a regular citizens list and go on and have a great life. I didn't understand. I was being prepared for something that, as long as you worked hard individually, was going to lend itself to a greater collective. But man, I'm so glad I see. I got an award, and I invited a man named Dr. Samuel Hill to accept that award with me. He had been my high school principal, and I was terrible my first 2 years of high school. I wanted to thug it out. Oh man, I wanted to be NWA, Tupac, Ice-T, everybody. I got in a horrible fight. He suspended me for 29 days. He said, well, you miss one more day, you get to go to alternative school, and I get to be done with you. My grandmother marched me back up to Frederick Douglass High School the next day and said, nope, we're not going to do this. He has to get an education. And Dr. Hill said, well, I can't do that because he has exhibited an extreme amount of violence in this fight. And she said, well, put him in in-school suspension. And I had to sit in in-school suspension for nearly a month and not say nothing and just focus. And in that time, I got a chance to read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I got a chance to read James Baldwin. Got a chance to read Zora Neale Hurston of Mules and Men and Their Eyes Were Watching God. And at the end of that 30 days of silence and reading, I understood I have a greater responsibility than even just staying in high school. I had to prove Frederick Douglass's words correct, that without struggle, there's no progress. So then I started going to the library instead of lunch. I started studying with a guy named Van Moody. He went on to become a pastor. I believe he's in Atlanta. And the principal came, and this is when I understood you can't hide your growth. That doesn't do any good for the community. The principal came and said, Michael, and he talked with a country accent, even though he's a doctor. Michael, why aren't you in the cafeteria? Well, I'm studying, Dr. Hill. I thought he'd be proud. He said, no, you still have to eat lunch, son. And he marched me down to the lunchroom, and all my friends and my homies from the projects and apartments, like I went to school with Shouted Low, that was my partner. We were from rival neighborhoods. When our neighborhoods would fight, we'd agree we ain't gonna hit each other, but we gonna fight. Dr. Hill made me stand next to him and eat my food every day. Oh, I was so mad and I was so embarrassed. But my friends said, man, we'll catch you after school. And they took their hands off me and they allowed me to grow. Because it made them proud to know that whatever was growing out of that concrete, a rose, a tulip, a lily, whatever it was, they were a part of by simply allowing me to be and then encouraging me to be. So if you have a friend, be an encourager. Encouragers create community. Well, I don't know how to do it, but we're going to find somebody who knows how to do it, and we are going to get it done. My grandmother, Betty Clunch, man, she was an encourager. If you called her, she said, well, I don't have an answer, but give me a minute. I'm going to call around. She was an encourager, an organizer. She was like my grandmother, Truzella, my great-grandmother. I would sit there and I would watch Truzella. We would have to take our clothes. You take your old clothes, your old blue jeans that you've grown out of. She would sit there on the porch. She would cut the fabrics up and she would knit these quilts. And these quilts are bonded together. My grandmother, great-grandmother died in 1984. I still have those quilts in my house to this day. And what I understood was that encouragers spend time knitting communities together, not tearing communities apart, not leaving your community. Encouragers are the thread that sew this republic together. So I spent my life trying to be the knit that keeps quilts together. I spent my life trying to be an encourager. I didn't wait till I became a rapper and felt a little guilty because I could buy a car, I had a big house. I have understood from day one that I have a duty to the Black community wherever we are. And if the Black community is served well, the greater community gets served well. This college has produced excellence that has done good for Tuskegee and the walls beyond. It has made Alabama a place where you can figure it out and profit. whether you're Montgomery or Birmingham, Mobile. I've seen Black people succeeding and determined. I'm proud that Alabama produced a family like the Blacks. I'm proud that that family lent itself to Atlanta. And when Atlanta gets a showboat, you know, they get their fancy suits up there. They think they're better. You wouldn't be better without Bama. You wouldn't be better without those people that came from rural Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee and threaded this community together. So I want people to understand that as we talk about our individual success, whatever shapes us and gives us, we must reinvest in our community. It is not enough to complain on YouTube about gentrification if you're not doing reintrification. Well, what's reintrification? Reintrification is when you stall gentrification by reinvesting in the neighborhood that produced your black tail. My family owned a store that my great-grandparents would grow food in, and their cousin would then have a store and would sell that produce. My cousin could have left. She could have went to Atlanta. She could have went to New York like her sister. She could have went to Florida like her other sister. She stayed in Tuskegee. Her grandchildren are still in Tuskegee to this day. When I got down here the first time, I hadn't been out farming so long, I forgot how to get there. My cousin said, I'll be over there in 10 minutes. You need to see the land we grew up on. And I said, man, it's only two miles from the university. Yeah, you don't remember that? It is our job to use our individual success to reinvest in our communities. So I had no choice when I got successful but to figure out a way to be in business and be about business. I have a song called I Shed Tears from the Michael album, the one that won the Grammys. And I said, I shed tears every morning in the bathroom mirror, face to face, had to face my fears. It was me. I'm the reason that I failed. That was hell. It's an amazing thing, and I said to someone this morning, it's an amazingly empowered thing when you get to look at yourself and hold yourself accountable. It's on me. It's my fault. I made the wrong decision. That does not mean systemic racism does not exist. But why would I go up there and move and put my child in this white school? I knew somebody was gonna call my child nigga.